continuing with the program, and that's I guess that's what we do in the MTD, right? Is we hold heavy stuff and also continue to grapple with other things. And um, I we have the honor of having Belinda Groves with us tonight, who I know does that dance so beautifully, of being able to lament and rejoice at the same time. And I've asked Dermot Catuli, who's a friend, to introduce you tonight, Belinda, so that we can get, I guess, a bit of a insight as to who you are, and so that people can understand where you're coming from when you share.
Excellent. Look, hi everyone. It is a real privilege to introduce Belinda tonight. She has been an absolute blessing to our church here in Tasmania, and she's the real deal. I think that she's one of the people in the world that I look up to, that I admire quite a lot. So this is her little bio. Try not to feel too intimidated as I read it out for you. But Belinda is the co-founder of Sepheo, an NGO in Lesotho that has contributed to a 95% reduction in the number of children living on the streets of downtown Maseru. Drawing on a background in politics alongside qualifications in psychology and international law, she works at the intersection of strategy and faith to design responses to entrenched social challenges. Belinda recently completed a master's in inequalities at the London School of Economics, where her research highlighted the importance of identity in shaping effective interventions with street-connected children. Alongside her work in Lesotho, she teaches and speaks cross-culturally, sharing insights on trauma, resilience, faith, and systems change with a focus on equipping others to lead lasting transformations. We are in for a real treat tonight, and it's great to have Belinda with us.
Thank you so much, Dermot, and Merrifield as well. It's just such an honor to speak about our beautiful home of Lesotho. I consider Lesotho my home. And it's hard to talk about a place that is, I suppose, someone else's home as well. So I want to do it justice today. That is my goal. And I'm grateful to be here. I pray that I can share some of the insights, some of the learnings from my time in Lesotho, because I think a lot of it is relevant across cultures and across places when we work with marginalized groups. So as Dermot says, my name is Belinda Groves. I am the co-founder of Sepheo, and I have been living and working in Maseru, Lesotho for the last 14 years. As he said, we have seen a significant decrease in the number of children living in downtown Maseru in that time as a result of our initiatives, which at the moment we're seeing a success rate of between 92 and 95%. So it has just been an incredible transformation over the last 15 years. But as a caveat today, I am going to be speaking about exclusion in the context of Lesotho. And I want to emphasize that what I'm speaking about is not representative of Basotho culture more broadly. Basotho as a cultural group are possibly the most inclusive and accepting people that I have ever known. They have shaped me and changed me. And I actually see that we in the West could learn a lot from the way they include marginalized people. So I'm speaking about a subset of circumstances today, not about a people or a culture as a whole. If I just share my screen. Can we all see it? Apparently you might be able to see it in a window to the side if you're not getting it in the main screen. Okay. So today there are a couple of key learning outcomes that I hope we can land on. By the end of today's lecture, I'm hoping that we can recognize how exclusion and marginalized identity contribute to persistent poverty. that we can understand the internal and the external social identity mechanisms, that we can identify implications of exclusion and identity for intervention design, and that we can consider practical ways to bring awareness of exclusion and identity into our localized responses. When I first moved to Maseru in 2012, it was not to work with street-connected children. It was to help support the national elections. But as I walked to and from the centre of town to my work each day, I encountered hundreds of street-connected children daily. At the time, there was about 120 children just in that CBD alone. And for that 120 children, there were up to 20 different organisations working with them consistently. They were feeding programs available most days of the week. They were giving clothing, life skills, sports activities, counselling. People sent them to school, rented them homes, took them into their own homes. Multiple churches ministered to them and fed them each and every week. Occasionally, interventions worked, but not at any scale. The majority of these children that I knew attended interventions weekly and made their way back to the streets. Many children that I knew personally ended up dying there or going to prison. And I was asking myself this very question: why does nothing work? 120 children with this many helpers looked like a solvable problem. The explanation I was given at the time was behaviour. Kids were rebellious, they liked the freedom, they didn't want authority. And what I discovered was that while that was true for some of them, for most, that explanation did not hold. There was something much deeper going on. This is a picture of downtown Maseru in 2012. From 2012 to 2014, I spent 2 years just sitting in the streets of downtown Maseru with children. I joined their friendship groups and I got to know them. And as they began to trust me, they took me back to the villages that they had come from to meet their families, to visit their old schools, to know their neighbours. I saw where they came from and I met who they were connected to. And what I saw was that while these children were poor, they were not poorer than other children in the village. What did set these children apart was their experience of social exclusion. Usually, these children had come from families that neighbours avoided. They had fathers who denied paternity. They had mothers who would drink excessively and not sleep at home. They had stepfathers who told them not to touch their food because they weren't his biological child. The chaos in their home, of course, shaped their behaviours, which led to rejection and isolation in their schools. So they stopped going, or they bunked school and went to the streets. Seen as dysfunctional, healthier families in that village would tell their children not to play with these kids. So they were completely isolated in every normal childhood sphere, in their home, in their village, and in their school. And these children started to view themselves in a particular way. They could see, I do not fit in my village. I am not like normal children. And this led them to look for other places to belong. They bonded with other rejected children and they made their way to the streets. And this is where we saw the most critical split. that children who were poor but included used the street instrumentally, but they did not feel that they belonged there. They would come to the street, make money, and go back home to share it with the people they were connected to. And if they ever attempted to sleep in the streets, somebody who loved them would come to fetch them. But children who were poor and excluded, coming to the street didn't just change their circumstance. It started to reshape their identity. Mehab, are you still here? I'm going to need your help with this next section.
Yes, I'm still here.
Dumela mme.
Okay. Dumela me Belinda.
O phela jwang?
Ke phela hantle, o phela jwang?
Ke phela hantle mme.
O so le Mosotho ka nnete.
Ke Mosotho mme wa.
Thank you.
Dankie. Mehab, if I was to say this word to you, Mokwau, what does it mean?
Yeah, this word it's a demeaning word. It's used for kids who are staying in the street, kids who it's even used for the kids who beg in the street, not just kids, even adults. It's associated with people who use drugs. Yeah, so that's what they are called.
Absolutely. So it is the word that is used to describe someone who is homeless, but its meaning extends far beyond a situation. Mokwau means that you are homeless and you are dirty. You are a street rat. You are a thief. You are rebellious. You are pitiable. You are dangerous. You are disgusting. And you are worthless. When a child arrives on the street, they are almost instantly categorized by society as belonging to this group known as Mokwau. And as Mehape just showed us, Mokwau is not merely a description of a child's circumstance. Mokwau is a social category with assumptions about who you are, what you are worth, how you behave, and how others should treat you. This is not street as circumstance. This is street as personhood. This is who you are. And being identified as a member of this group profoundly shapes the types of treatment and opportunity that you are entitled to. On this slide here, I have a list of the identity beliefs and treatment that are associated with the word Mokwau in Lesotho. This is the type of treatment that a Mokwau is entitled to. On the left, I have things that you would do to a Mokwau. And on the right, I have a list of things that you would never do. For children who arrived on the streets, almost overnight, they were no longer socially regarded as a child. Almost every interaction from that moment on revolved around their projected new status as a Mokwau. They were avoided, beaten, pitied, instantly. And it wasn't occasional. For the 2 years that I was sitting in the streets, this happened over and over and over again. Hundreds of these interactions every week. And it was shaping these kids' identity. And it was telling them their place in the world. Why is it going the wrong way, guys? I missed one slide. I had an important slide here and I'm going to just read it to you because it's not showing up. But I came across this quote in a research article by a woman called Lorraine Young from 2003. She was conducting research with street-connected children in Uganda, and she had hoped to provide them with cameras to document their daily life. When she tried to give a camera to one boy, he responded with, "I'm a street kid. I can't be trusted with a camera." And this is the process of identity internalization. What we understand about adolescence is that identity is being formed in real time. It is shaped internally, but it is also shaped very strongly by the social interactions they are having in the world. And what we as adults and we as society reflect back to them. Young people work out who they are from what feels available to them. What can I achieve? What are people saying I can do? And from there, they decide where they belong. So when a child is spending time on the street being labelled and maltreated, it is not just affecting their circumstance. It starts to shape how they see themselves and the beliefs they are forming about where they fit in the world. What we observed with children on the streets in Maseru was that the longer they were on the street, the more they developed these internal beliefs. This is who I am. They had an almost pitiable view of their self with time. There is nothing good inside of me. There is nothing that can be expected from my life. Your role is to give to me. My role is to beg. They started to wear filthy, ill-fitting clothes, even when they owned brand new ones. They became comfortable living outside. They became almost numb to the beatings. And eventually, even when they were offered alternatives, new homes, opportunities to go to school, it was eventually the street that felt most like home. They would bounce from program to program, not as a way to get off the street, but as a method for sustaining life on the street. And at that point, getting off the street was no longer a matter of external opportunity only, but their internal identity had become a barrier to their exit. Here's the one I wanted to show you. Absolutely devastating. What I've witnessed with street-connected children in Lesotho is not specific to our nation, and nor is it specific to children on the streets. There is strong research that links stigmatized identity to persistent poverty. For anyone who is interested, I have listed 2 researchers who cover this topic. We have Frances Stewart, who has a theory of horizontal inequalities or group-based inequalities, and also Nyla Kabir. What both of their work shows is that when poverty combines with exclusion and stigma, it becomes harder to exit from than poverty alone. That poverty becomes sticky. I saw it as intervention resistant. We're addressing poverty, but nothing is changing. And the identity of Mokwao was indeed sticky. I remember this particular time where we had located a child from the streets, mother in a village, and we were walking the child through that village to reunite with her. And as we're walking through the back streets of that village, people are popping out of their homes. Mokwao, Mokwao, there's a Mokwao, there's a Mokwao. When something goes missing in a village or a school, the Mokwao took it. Even in households, when we had reintegrated children into homes, there were kids who were told not to cook, not to touch things, because they were dirty. They were still Mokwao long after they exited the streets. And for a lot of children, that level of pressure and rejection was too much to bear. And they left their homes and ran back to the streets, where they belonged. This is the part that is critical for us to understand today. Because as practitioners, we have a role in this. When we are not aware of identity, our interventions can inadvertently strengthen it. In Maseru, when children were attending 20 different interventions in a week, many of them were inadvertently strengthening their connection to the street, their identity as a Mokwao. Often, they were grouping and homogenizing children as one and the same. Their individuality was lost. They were all one big group of Mokwao. They were segregated from regular children. They were running feeding programs with explicit street kid signs. They were adopting many of the same would and would not behaviours that we covered earlier, keeping their distance, believing kids are dirty or untrustworthy. Some would even use the term Mokwao to the child or to describe them. And a lot of the outreach to new children arriving on the streets sounded like, oh, hey, we have a street kids program you can come to on Thursday. Instead of treating the street as a situation to be changed, we as helpers were treating it as an identity. Telling them they were street children, then wondering why they ran back to the streets. If we are going to get street children off the streets, we have to fix what is keeping them there. So as Sepheo, we set out to do exactly this. We needed to reverse exclusion and rebuild identity. To rebuild children's connections to healthy spaces in the village became our number one goal. We wanted their connections to be in mainstream spheres, in healthy homes, in healthy neighbourhoods, in mainstream schools, to a relative, to a neighbour, to their community. And so we started with the question, tell me about the person who loves you most in the world. And our street workers would go out and find that person and begin to repair and rebuild the connections. If we couldn't find that person, we would wade through the entire extended family structure of this child, their entire history. This child didn't come from nowhere. They came from a place with people who once cared. We find those, we repair those, and we strengthen those, so that every child we intervene with becomes connected or reconnected with someone who is their primary attachment in a village. Secondly, we work to rebuild their identity. Our goal is to normalise how they are seen in the community and how they see themselves. They are not Mukwao. They are a child. They are somebody's son. They are somebody's friend. They are a student. They are a human created by God for a purpose, which is what Sepheo means. Sepheo means purpose. So to do this, we started a primary school in the village. Though it looks like a regular primary school, all our staff were trained to understand trauma and to respond to behaviour in ways that don't result in a child's rejection or exclusion. We designed an intervention that looked nothing like a street kid program. We designed an intervention to normalise them. So while we do address poverty and we do teach life skills and we do catch up academics, we do it in a way that normalises who they are rather than reinforcing their identity. And every day their neighbours watch them get up and bath and come to school just like a regular child. And the way they are seen in the village begins to change. We teach children how to make and be a friend, how to help with chores, how to be a child. And we help them with small, achievable goals to create momentum, bringing success back into reach. I want to encourage those of you who feel that this would take a lot of resource. You're not wrong, but it's not the resource that you're thinking of. The resource wasn't money. The resource was people who genuinely loved. When we started, for the first 5 years, we had a folding table under a tree. And we eventually moved that into a tent. And in that time, we reduced the number of children living on the street by half. When we understood what was really going on, and when we adjusted our strategies, we saw the corresponding shift in our outcomes. It was a matter of understanding and responding to the root cause. So the primary takeaways for our interventions that I wanted to leave with you today was one, if poverty seems sticky, if it is not responding to interventions, can we consider if there is more than poverty at work? Are exclusion and marginalised identity influencing the outcomes that you're seeing? And two, when we work with marginalised groups, we should be conscious of inadvertently reinforcing their marginalised identity through the way we label people or even just describe our programs. Whether we're using unnecessary segregation. Are we allowing stereotypes about groups to shape our expectations? Are we accidentally maintaining distance and avoiding genuine relationships? I'll hand back to you, Tanya, but I have some questions for our breakouts.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you so much, Belinda. If you want to give a clap emoji or however you would like to express your thanks. Belinda, thank you so much. I was thinking there's so many pieces in my own PhD that link in with your research, but for you to have lived it this way in Lesotho and to have become so passionate about the community and to have poured out so much love upon these children, we thank you on behalf of the MTD community for valuing them and for placing new words on these children, giving them big smiles and the kinds of things that we should see from children. Yeah, my 4-year-old and my 7-year-old struggling to go to sleep, but I can imagine how much that transformation makes for each one of those individuals. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tanya.
we have a couple of minutes for questions, and I've said it would be great if you wanted to put them in the chat. You might be new to our community, you might never have attended a webinar before. You're very welcome to put a question in the chat. While I hope you do type in something, but I did want to ask you something, Belinda, that I've been thinking a bit about. So one of the really beautiful things about inviting you to be here is that you're a fellow Pentecostal, and in some corners of the world, the Pentecostal community has been slower than maybe other expressions to take on some of this work. There's lots of exceptions in this Zoom, so the quizzical looks might be coming. Is that what we're known for? But I think, generally speaking, across the world, the Pentecostal communion has a lot more to do in relation to engaging some of these community engagement spaces and in development. And we're very passionate about that. I wondered if you could maybe put inclusion, which has been such an important part of your journey, into a theological language. What does inclusion mean to you? Yeah.
That's a really beautiful question, Tanya. I think I've tried to make this an academic presentation, but I could have given the entire thing from a biblical perspective and talked about the way God inspired and led a lot of this revelation. Because what was emerging for me when I was sitting in those streets for years, I mean, it was transformative for the way I saw God and the way I saw the role of the church and the way I saw the poor. I don't see the poor as people that we act out our commission on. I see the poor as part of the body, and that when the injustices and the obstructions are lifted, then they join us and they take their part in this work. So it has absolutely been transformative. The faith element of this, I have seen God transform people from death to life, and I have seen them turn that transformation into service to others. A lot of my staff have been through horrendous things, and she who has been forgiven much loves much. I can say that for certain. I think the hard part, I mean, I think it's easier to talk about transformation. It's easy to praise God for his power and for what he wants to do for people. But the act of walking people through healing is a death to self. And that's really the journey that the Pentecostal church and all churches need to go on if we're going to be able to meet this need, is how much can I die? How long can I serve? How many times can I forgive while somebody is walking back all the pain and injustice that has happened to them?
Thank you so much for that. It's so beautiful. I know that people have questions. I know that there we go. Chris, would you like to unmute and ask? I feel like you're a veteran, Chris. You should be. Are you able to unmute, Chris? Chris Chalmer, where are you?
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. How are you? Okay, yeah, thank you for the presentation. Yeah, it's so good. I was just thinking to say, when we see those street children, they form what is called a subculture. They come from the mainstream culture and form what is called a subculture. And then I was just thinking to say, is there any society that do not have a subculture? Yeah, and then the other question which was on my mind was, is there no identity to the people who are in the subculture? Because I believe, like what Belinda was explaining, that most of these street kids, they do not have maybe their fathers, and then their stepfathers, they tell them not to touch food meant for their biological children. So they run away from their homes, and then they find like identity with their fellow kind of children on the streets who do not have fathers. So I was thinking that I think they find identity when they team up with those other guys on the street. So I don't know, is there any lack of identity for subculture kind of groups? Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. I think it's a really excellent question. I think you've described it well. I think they absolutely do form a subculture. They know they are rejected, but they are collectively rejected, and there's some solidarity and there's some empowerment in that. And it's one of the things that takes a while to break. So we often need group strategies in order to remove children off the streets. We will look at a particular group, we will look at the leaders, we'll look at the reasons that they are there, and it can take us a year or two to build trust with that group before even one of them leaves. But what tends to happen is when one of them goes, the others will follow because they are part of the same group. They are following one another. So I think you're correct in saying there is that subculture and identity that comes along with it, but you can use it in a positive way as well. It doesn't only have to work in the negative way if you can crack the group and earn the trust.
Thanks. I'm just, Emmanuel has asked a question in the chat, and I'm so sorry, Emmanuel, that I didn't catch it before. The question is, development programs and projects always focus on the results over the process. How did you manage to convince between programming demands and patience to arrive at the results that move these children back to normalcy? Fantastic question,
Fantastic
Emmanuel.
question, Emmanuel. I think we were really lucky in that for the first 5 years, we literally had no donors. No one was requiring us to produce results. There weren't schedules, timeframes, accountability for money. We had nothing. So we were just figuring out what to do and what worked and didn't work. So now I can say to a donor, it's going to take 3 years. You need to give me 3 years per child from the point that I meet them on the street to the point where they're stable in their village. And that's just something that I build into the project. But that is a constant demand, isn't it? You have something that works or that would work if you could slow it down, but the donor demands just don't permit it.
I think, does that answer your question as well, Steve? Self-funding is the possibly the way to get around some of the strings attached.
Yes, it does, because I can't imagine many NGOs or mission organisations that would be willing to sit that long as Belinda did before anything significant seemed to happen. So, yeah.
Yeah, maybe that's a commentary and a sailor moment for us as well. Hape, I wanted to give you the chance to ask a question to Belinda as well. This is your context and you, did you want to ask your question? I can see your hand up.
Yes. Thank you so much, Belinda. Thank you. For the presentation. It was really disheartening. As somebody who lived in the streets of Maseru, I understand what you have been going through as Sepheo, and thank you guys for doing such a great job for staying for that long until you make a difference. So I believe also that often we get so familiar with poverty and marginalized groups and community, and for a lack of a better word, we sometimes become numb to the situation around us. This is what I'm feeling as I'm listening, as somebody who has stayed in the streets of Maseru. So my question is, you mentioned that there were 20 NGOs or groups working with these children. Maseru is a very small town, and my question is whether these 20 groups actually came together at all to find a coordinated way to help these children and reintegrate them into the society. Because what I've seen is that the challenge that I've seen in Lesotho, or most of the NGO programs in Lesotho, is that usually they work in silos. Every organization will be concentrating on their donor requirements. As a result, so the intervention are often fragmented and not well coordinated with also other stakeholders like maybe the Department of Social Development. So maybe my question is, was there any coordinated way of helping such that we don't find five organizations doing the same thing? Let's say maybe they are feeding them every day, then it's just that, to actually see what are the needs, and then as 20 NGOs, how can we help each other to help these children? Thank you.
Thank you, Mehape. I think that's an excellent question and excellent observation. That is certainly how it does work in the NGO world. That was probably an important part of my story that I missed because I was there for my job. I really didn't plan to stay. And my hope had been to figure out what was going on and then influence some of those existing organizations to change strategies. So I actually volunteered full time for one of the bigger ones to try and influence them to take the money they had and do things a little bit differently. And I failed miserably even at that. I would say now there's probably no longer 20. You would still get a lot of the feeding going on. And even there, I do kind of struggle because one of the things we've observed is that feeding programs set up in the center of town actually attracts children out of the village and onto the street. Children discovering that there's food consistently here, they'll go home and they'll bring children who are stable in the villages to come to town to eat. Then they make connections and they end up staying. So even just with that, I have been trying to influence different organizations. Can we take feeding back into the villages where it's safer and not draw children out to the streets? And it's been disheartening in some ways because I think that's where true motive can come out. There are people who are genuinely motivated for what is best for children and they listen and they'll do that. But there are people who are doing it for other reasons. And to go back to the village, there's no publicity, there's no show, it's harder, and they'll just continue. So it has been a bit disheartening in that respect. But in terms of social development, we have an MOU with them. We work very closely with them, and they've been really supportive. So now they actually no longer allow new initiatives for street-connected children until someone has come to Sepheo to learn about the root causes.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Well, I know the MTD, and I know that we could be here asking questions all night. And I think I can only say I'm so sorry for all the people that I can see questions of. I wonder whether, Belinda, would you be okay for us to collate those questions and just send it to you an email? I know that your heart is to serve and to teach those who are particularly practitioners who are really wanting to grow and learn. So thank you so much. So there are just two things before we move into the breakout groups, and then you can discuss together. And I'm sure your insights shared in those groups between all of the diverse people and roles and things that we have represented here will be really helpful. But I just wanted to make this is my last opportunity, our applications for the MTD. If you're in the room and you are really hoping to get involved and to join a master's program that facilitates questions like this, and not just this one, but an entire week of conversations like this one and throughout our semester as well, you are very welcome to come along on Friday to an open session, and we will help you to think through how study might fit into your life. It works just a little bit differently for everyone. We've realized that, post-COVID, the reality is that we have to be really strategic about figuring out how to grow and learn. And so we would love to have a conversation with you around that. So I think, Noemi, you're going to place that chat for if people can register. Would like to register for that, you're very welcome to register, and we would love to set up a conversation with one of our staff or someone that has been involved in our program and can assist you in thinking it through. Essentially, that's all I have to do, and I know that probably you are extremely excited to chat about all the wonderful things that you've learned today. So I'm going to pop the questions here. I'm going to pray for you, and then I will I will set up the cohort groups and open them up so that you can join. But I just wanted to again thank Belinda for her time and investing in us tonight. I know that you're very discerning about where you invest, and we're really grateful. So let's pray. Lord, I just thank you for Sepheo. I thank you for the work that is being done in Lesotho. I thank you that you led Belinda on this path, that your spirit guided her there. I pray, Lord, for every single one of us who are gathered, that you would guide us also, that you would guide our practice, that you would guide our thinking, that you would guide our heart, our hands. Lord, that you would lead us into the place that you would like us to be. And I pray that we would serve there, Lord God, with full joy, Lord, in your resurrection power. And Lord, at times, even when we're awaiting the Spirit to show up in the need that we present to you, I pray that you would be with us and that you would be with the poor, Lord God. I pray that you would make us attentive to the ways in which their identity and vocation need to be transformed, but also to the ways in which ours need to be. We thank you for tonight and for shining light on those places. In your mighty name, Jesus. Amen. Amen.